So good afternoon. Hopefully everybody's awake after lunch. And welcome to the 2024 Afternoon Insight Session. My name is Vanessa Henley. I head up the facades category at Drive-It Tremco. I'm also Drive-It's Board of Directors representative. We're very pleased to sponsor today's afternoon Insight speaker, Donna LaCardia Carr, PhD and lead AP. Donna is an Industry Insights Research Director at Dodge Data and Analytics. I'm sure many of you are familiar with that. Where she provides editorial direction to the Smart Market Report series. The reports cover diverse topics such as world green building trends, business value of BIN, diversity, equity, and inclusion in the design and construction industry, the drive towards healthier buildings, building a safety culture, and lean construction. Donna's insights on these topics have been published in numerous industry publications, and she regularly conducts webinars on these topics as well. She's talked about this research at events for diverse organizations such as the American Institute of Architects National Conference, U.S. Green Building Council's Green Build, the Construction Management Association of America's National Convention, Associated General Contractor of America's National Convention, and the Lean Construction Institute, and many others. Previously, Donna was responsible for policy and training for the editorial division of Dodge Reports. Donna has her PhD from Tulane University, MA from Boston University, and BA from Middlebury College. Today, Donna will be speaking about the top trends in the construction industry, so please join me in giving her a warm welcome.
Thank you, Vanessa. Hello, everyone. It is a real pleasure to be with you here today. I'm really glad to be invited. We love sharing our data, so I look forward to sharing all this with you. You've already heard enough about me, but as you all know, and it sounds like most of you probably are familiar with Dodge and all of our various companies and the resources we have. But I bet a lot of you are not as familiar with the specific division that I work for, which does market research. We do both custom market research, things like tracking how your brand is doing, figuring out how to launch new products, things like that. But we also partner with industry organizations to do research on key trends in the construction industry. We cover trends like technology, sustainability, different process improvements. And this is a fabulous time to be doing that kind of work in the industry because there is so much change that is going on right now. So, I've been working for Dodge since the late 80s, and I really have never seen quite as much interest and change in the industry as I've seen in the last 10 years. So today, first we're going to kind of shift gears a little bit away from my market research, and I'm going to share with you some of the outlook that our economists have done. So this is my chance to be, I'm not an economist, but I play one on TV role. But I will share with you their findings about what to expect in the next year for various sectors. And then we're going to talk about contractor trends, specifically three things that are deeply linked together. Their business challenges, and we're really focused on the trades for that, the risks they face, and then how digital transformation is a means of helping them address those challenges. And then finally, we just published some research on sustainability trends in single-family homes that we thought this crowd might be very interested in. So that section is going to be a very quick little section. So, but let's dive in because we've got a lot to cover. So first, there's the forecast. So the first thing you need to know is what is our forecast based on? And there's a couple of things that you need to bear in mind. One is that our economists right now are not predicting a recession in 2024. They also were not predicting a recession in 2023, and people were a little bit more on the edge of their seats about it back in 2023 than they are now. It's become a little bit more common accepted knowledge that maybe we're not on the brink of a recession at this point. And we've seen that impact, which I'll get to in a bit, on how the market's behaving. So that's one of the big assumptions. Another big assumption is that the Fed, that inflation is not going to get terribly worse, that the Fed is not going to do any more increases for the time being, and that in fact we'll start seeing rate decreases in the third quarter of this year. So that is another assumption that is hardwired into this forecast. Therefore, one of the biggest risks to this forecast is if inflation in fact stays pretty vigorous and the Fed either keeps increasing or decides it's too soon to decrease in 2024. We'll see some of the stuff that I'm talking about push a little bit. The market demand for a lot of what we're going to discuss is real. So it's not going to disappear, but if inflation doesn't go down, we might see it delayed in terms of its impact. Of course, there's a few other risks. Tighter credit comes directly out of the higher interest rates. The industry has the income sectors in this industry, office, hospitality, some of those sectors, multi-residential, they've been really kind of struggling with credit issues, and that's been kind of a damper on them as well. If there is any kind of major thing, right? I mean, I don't even think it would be a black swan right now because there is a lot of chaos in this world at the moment. So, a big geopolitical thing that happens in the world could shift this forecast. Now, it did not shift when Hamas invaded Israel and that war started. That did not really have the kind of impact on U.S. construction that would change the forecast significantly. So, it would probably have to be a pretty major event, but a major event obviously could be very influential. And just, we always seem to be on the verge of a government shutdown. If a government shutdown actually occurs that's longer or some other thing happens that dries up funding on the federal government side, that of course would have implications. But generally, we have an extremely positive outlook that I'm really happy to share with you. But first we're going to talk about one of the things that has been a real issue, which is the challenge with material prices. So the red bar here is the year-over-year percentage change in construction material prices. So what you need to be aware of is this is percentage change. These aren't like flat, where are the prices at, right? So even though you see this big dip, right, in the early 2022, that does not mean that prices were lower than they were in 2017. That is not the case. All those increases, this is just the percentage of change. So I want to be very clear about that. The other bar, what you'll see here, actually, before I move to the other bar, what you'll see here in this red bar is that, we saw that huge spike that everyone in 2022, we saw it start to recover. In 2022, we saw it settled down a bit so that it went negative. But now, as you'll see, in the first quarter of 2020, as we move into 2023, heading into 2024, it's started to increase again. And it's back above zero, back above that zero line again. So if we're no longer seeing, the percentage change being lower than it was last year, we're starting to see it be higher again. And that's going to affect the price, the cost of construction, because that's what that blue bar is. That blue bar is really just a substitute for bid prices in terms of construction final demand. It's the same year-over-year percentage change. You can see that it echoes the red line, but it's slightly delayed, right? So we haven't seen this yet happen over here. So. That's one thing to be aware of, that we are expecting some price inflation this year. This chart just speaks for itself. We've never seen, even though construction has endemically suffered with labor shortages now for well over a decade, we've never seen labor shortages like we've seen since the pandemic. So I think all of you are pretty aware of that. One interesting thing that our economists have noticed is that in 2023, there was a real delay in projects breaking ground. So the time it takes, the average time it takes per sector for projects to move from planning, the planning stages in Dodge, into the start stages in Dodge. And it really varies by sector. Now, one thing that we feel that everything, the cost of materials and the cost of labor are influencing this because it's making owners leery about getting in and starting their projects. The other major thing, again, I want to go back to those interest rates. They are the big underlying factor through a lot of this. You'll see the sectors where the increases are really dramatic. They're all sectors in which lending is tight and interest rates are high. So we've got hotels, multifamily, office. Those are the ones experiencing the spikes. The more public sector stuff and like health is not as much, and manufacturing isn't as much because there's so much money right now being poured into manufacturing, either from onshoring because there is so much concern about the supply chain that companies are coming back, reshoring onto the US. So that's a big factor. The other factor that's really keeping demand very high for manufacturing is the legislation, the CHIPS Act, the IRA, all of that had funding to encourage manufacturing in the United States. So that sector has been bolstered by all of that activity. And we also at Dodge, in addition to having our starts forecast, which I know our starts report that you always hear every month, we also do a momentum index. It looks at all that rich planning data that the Dodge Reports has, figures out what's going on, and that we found is a pretty good indicator of starts, not surprisingly, right? That eventually we figured out a way to say, okay, what's going on with planning and what does it mean? So you can see that since the recession, which is this gray bar over here, we've seen a big increase in the number of planning projects that we're reporting on. And the momentum index has significantly increased. But when you get to the latter half of 2022, things and early 2020 things started to decline a little. We genuinely think that was concerns about recessions. We found that owners, again, were reluctant to really invest and say they're moving forward on projects while there's a big recessionary concern. They wanted to make sure the demand was there for what they were producing. However, we see in the second half of 2023 that's starting to pick back up again. As fears of a recession decline and as concerns that as the expectation that soon we actually might see declines in the interest rates, we see planning projects start to pick up. So that's a big factor in our forecast. Now we move to the actual forecast sector. We forecast in three major sectors. We do residential, non-residential, which is commercial and institutional, and we do infrastructure. And I'm going to go through them in that order. So first, this is residential. The dark blue parts of the bars are the single-family homes, and then multi-residential is the red part of the bar. The good news is that single-family homes are looking really good. We already have seen an improvement just as the interest rates have leveled off in the production of single-family homes. And we expect that to continue to grow. The demand is definitely there. The market is undersupplied for single-family homes right now. So there is a real genuine market for it. They just need the interest rates to go down to let loose the hounds. The only reason this isn't bigger is because, remember, we're not expecting interest rates to actually go down until the third quarter of this year. So 2025 is going to look really good at those blue bars. We've seen some fallback in the multifamily sector, but I think one of the nice things about our huge, this only goes back to, we actually go back to the 60s, but our huge historical database is you can really get a sense, okay, yeah, maybe we're seeing some fallback in multi-res, but look at the difference in the size of the multi-res market compared to single-family homes, compared to, say, 2010 through 2014. This is so much larger of a market. Even if it's falling back a little bit, you're not going to see what happened between here. We all know what happened in there. Affordability became a major issue United States. It's very hard for a lot of people to get into single-family homes. So even though there's a huge driver for them to still be built, and we're expecting that market to be rigorous, we don't think it's going to pull so far away from multi-res that multi-res will crash. It's just a question of the balance in the United States of housing has shifted. And we think that's a relatively permanent state. All right, so now we're going to move to what we call non-residential, but we're going to start with commercial. And commercial is a real mixed bag, okay? Let's get it out of the way. I'm going to talk about most of the sectors up there in that little small print, but let's get office out of the way now. Nothing about office is good. Office depends on interest rates. It's oversupplied right now. No one knows what it should look like. Is not the sector you want to be in right at this moment. There is no doubt. However, there are a lot of bright spots in commercial. Retail follows residential. We have always found that where residential goes in, retail comes along. And residential is going to boom and has already started to grow. So we a really positive forecast for stores. Warehouses. 10 years ago, warehouses were like a very small percentage of the total commercial start picture. Now they're 30% of the total commercial start picture. Now, we've seen back warehouses in the last year and a half to 2 years, but that's solely the fact that Amazon is pulling back on their production. And Amazon is such a huge player in the warehouse market that it actually makes a percentage difference when they say, no, we're going to do a lot fewer warehouses than we did 2 years ago. They just went crazy. They built so much in 21 and 22, and now they're pulling back. So technically, we're seeing warehouse pull back, but warehouse is still a pretty vigorous, strong market with a lot of demand. Hotels, we're seeing travel return, and with travel comes the expectation that there is a market for hotels. So it's both revenge travel and, business travel. And I think, look around you. Business travel is definitely back. Maybe not as many people going to visit their clients face-to-face. There might be a few more meetings, online meetings that are going on for that, but certainly conferences. So manufacturing is another part of our non-residential outlook. And manufacturing, that's a very negative title, I must say, that our economists gave this slide for what is actually mostly very positive picture. This is IRA and reshoring right here. I mean, look at the dramatic difference. Manufacturing is always been an extremely volatile sector, but this is what volatility used to look like, right? This is what it's looking like right now. So it's extraordinary. And what they mean by that is just that there was some delays, the concerns about the costs of materials, the concerns about the labor shortages. We're seeing some starts in manufacturing. But generally, we think that the 24 is going to be a pretty positive year for manufacturing. There are, though, two possible difficulties on the horizon for that, but they shouldn't impact it majorly. One is that a lot of the manufacturing we're seeing forecasted are EV battery plants. And we've seen a lot of them in the second quarter of last year pull back their investment on EV plants because they just want to see what the demand is. They're not sure, they feel like maybe the market was overpredicted. They want to, before they invest in a big manufacturing, that it makes sense. So that's a slight risk for manufacturing. The other major risk is, I can't remember. So hold on a second. Let me check my notes. I apologize. I had it all down, and I do want to make sure I let you know what the other manufacturing risk is. Oh, it's really just that it's the obvious thing. It's that the delays are going to continue. That they're still going to be a little uncertain about the cost of construction. They're still waiting to see the market settle down in terms of labor and product prices. That's the other delay. And that would just be a delay. But that's why we saw this 24% reduction. This is all projects delayed. We think a lot of them are moving to 2024. And again, the EV plants are about the only ones that we really think are at risk, but we think that chip plants that are funded by chips is definitely going forward. Institutional includes education, healthcare. So education, bullish for the things that are bullish for single-family homes, right? K through 12. When you have a lot of homes, you build a lot of K through 12 schools. Where's that happening? Texas, the West, where the homes are being built. Healthcare. Healthcare is kind of a bifurcated market right now. So clinics are huge, and clinics behave just like retail. They go into strip malls, they follow houses. So clinics, again, very, very positive forecast. And actually, I think there's been so much delay. For the years, people were trying to figure out what was going to happen with the Health Care Acts and everything, and whether anything was going to get repealed. I think they're finally saying, that's it, we just need to invest. We can't wait anymore to figure out if there's going to be any changes, or maybe they just feel like, nope, we've hit the point, past the point of return where we can actually start investing in hospitals. So we are seeing more investment in hospitals as well, but of course that's a little bit just market by market. Public is well funded. Recreation is, in particular, everything that has to do with travel is doing well. Convention centers we see as a real growth area, as are casinos. And transportation means transportation buildings here, not roads and bridges, because we're still in the building side of the market. And again, airports, that's also a transportation thing. So same factors influencing that. Infrastructure I won't spend too much time on because you all know about the IIJA. All I will say is that the money has been a little bit slower to come out than we had anticipated. So to a certain degree, as high and as big as these growth things are, they are a little bit slower. So we're thinking that the impact of it is actually going to be stretched out over more years. And then finally, this is my final forecast slide. This is everything. This is residential, non-res, and infrastructure. All combined together, we're anticipating 9% growth in 2024 over the entire construction market. So a pretty positive year overall. All right, next we're going to talk about, again, 3 trends that are that seem very different, but the more I thought about it, I thought about putting them in separate categories, but they're really also influenced by each other, that I wanted to cover them all in one big category, which is really digital transformation, but what's driving it in terms of business challenges and risks faced by contractors. So the first question really is, okay, if we think there's digital transformation going on, a lot of our data, including some of the data I'm about to share with you, it shows that the trades lag a little bit behind everyone else in terms of their adoption of digital technologies. So, but we know that for the digital transformation to really take hold in the industry, all players have to be involved, right? You can't have anyone who's in the whole ecosystem sort of pulling out. So the question is, what's going to move the needle, or what is moving the needle, I should say, for the trades? Why is it important to them? So we did a study on business issues for specialty contractors in partnership with Pro. And one thing I meant to mention when I was on my Smart Market Report slide, every report that I'm now going to present to you, this is not true of the forecast, but every report I'm now going to mention to you, the partners join us, we're able to publish it for free. So remember this website, construction.com/resources, because anything you want to find out more information on, because I'm staying pretty high level, you can download one of these reports and get a lot more information. So this is the only international study I'm going to talk about. There's some data that I'll share with you that wasn't different enough by country to pull out the US results. But we did survey a lot of English-speaking languages, the UK, Canada, and Australia and New Zealand in addition to the United States. There's the trades that we talked to. We focused on profitability, workforce, and technology. Okay, but we wanted to understand, When the trades experience profit margin erosion, what's causing it? And when you look at it, obviously, there's two big factors, right? It's material shortages and delays or price fluctuations and unforeseen conditions on the job site. Those are the two big impact factors of everything that we measured. But all of these, when you look at the second tier pretty much runs the course of this data chart. All of these factors are considered relatively important. These were all selected by at least a third to a quarter of the contractors as top reasons why their margins erode. And we find that technology really can help address a lot of these issues. The productivity and planning tools that are available right now can help with the lack of skilled labor, which of course leads to the need for greater productivity in your labor. And the challenges of inaccurate labor planning and allocation get much worse when you have a limited workforce that you're dealing with in the first place. Site capture and data exchange goes to one of those great big columns, unforeseen conditions on the job site, right? It's really important to understand what you're getting, and the better you can get things that capture that and allow you to see it in pre-construction phases, the better off they're going to be. Inaccurate estimating, directly related to unforeseen conditions on the job site. And then communication tools. Now, I've only circled this last one because it's the only one that's directly communication, but in fact, it's far more important than that, because we found that out of all of the trade contractors in the survey, they said 32% of the margin erosion they experience is caused just by the need to do rework. 32% of it. Imagine if you could just eliminate half of the rework that they have to experience now. What an impact that would have on their bottom lines. And what are the top 3 causes of rework? Communication is at the heart of 2 out of 3 of them. The ability to connect a team better is really essential, not just for the owner, not just for the general contractor, but very, very much for the trades. We also see that 29% of the contractors, and this time this is just purely US, in the US, the trade contractors in this survey report that a fifth of the time that their workers are working, they're doing things that aren't really moving the project along, that aren't advancing it, that are just this administrative tasks. Again, clearly an opportunity, a huge opportunity to improve productivity. And technology can be specifically useful in helping to get rid of administrative tasks if it doesn't create more administrative burdens, and it's well done. And we do see that they recognize that a lot of them look at construction technology to improve productivity as a top strategy that they're using to address this. So where do they stand right now, though, in terms of their use of technology? It's kind of a mixed picture. On the one hand, 61% are using either internally developed or modified software or commercially available construction software to perform key construction activities. So that's kind of good news. But first of all, there's the 39% who are not. That's a big issue. But beyond that, let's look a little closer at that 30% who are using their own internally developed software. Internally developed software is great in terms of what the one thing it's trying to accomplish. But if you are really talking about sharing your data across a project team, or even sharing your data internally with the other divisions that you're working with, that might really need to understand your performance analysis, your project execution, pre-construction, et cetera, it becomes really difficult when you just have these tools that you've created yourself. It tends to create data silos. And data silos are exactly what we need to move past. That is the big issue that we are going to talk about in just a little bit more. But I just want to finish with one final result from this survey. One thing that I think is very promising is that when we look at what's keeping them from investing in more technology, what prevents it, actually believing that their current methods are better is pretty low. Less than 20% say that that's really an important reason, and it falls pretty low on the list of options. So it isn't, I think sometimes contractors get a bad rap that somehow they're technology averse. And none of our data supports that. They do need technology that they can launch easily because they don't have a lot of time to keep training their staff and then retraining on version after version, right? So there's that. They do need technology that's easy enough to use so that they can give it to their field staff and not have the field staff push back and not even use it, right? But they really don't think that their manual methods are the way to go. They are interested and engaged in technology. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about risk management in technology. This is another study we did in partnership with Ignite. We looked at the key risks that this time, it's only US, but it's across the industry. AEC, architects, engineers, and contractors identify, and how they're using technology and how digital discipline can improve them. So, number one, supply chain. And you saw that while the supply chain is better, it's still not exactly what we would call good yet, right? And we know that they're still struggling with it. So, and when we look at the trade contractors, it goes from 50% who say this is their top issue to 70%. I'm sorry, not their top issue. They say it has a major impact on their business. So all of these, you could pick all of these if you felt they all had a major impact on their business, but they understood major impact should just be the things that hurt you most. But we didn't limit them in terms of the number they could pick. 70% of the trade contractors said these supply chain disruptions are serious. Much, much higher than those who said the ability to attract or retain talent. So what are we doing right now to minimize disruption to supply chain? I want you to just focus on the blue bars. Let's not focus on architects for just today. Just the contractor bars. Well, the big thing they're doing is they're identifying alternative sources for their material. Also raising their prices. We already saw that in a previous slide, and this confirms that. I'd like to call attention to, though, tracking location of materials during delivery. That is what many of them are trying to do right now to minimize the impact of this. And they're turning down work. Now, that's what they're doing, but we wanted to go a step further. We wanted to understand, well, is it working? You know, are these actually strategies that help you, or are these just what you've been able to come up with and they're not that effective? Not surprisingly, identifying alternative sources for materials is important, and that, you know, all of you out there, you should hear, we've got to be able to guarantee delivery or they're going to look in other places, right? But increasing the amount of inventory, while it looks like a tall bar, if you really focus just on the high, very high side here, you can see actually most of the ones who think that's helpful only think it's moderately helpful. Far more helpful on the high, very high side is, again, tracking that location of materials and, unfortunately, turning down work. And believe me, turning down work is not where they want to end. So really tracking location of materials comes out as a top thing. Now, I'm not going to go into any kind of detail. There's a lot more data in the report. But I did want to show you that when we looked at the other effective means, that last chart I gave you, not what they're doing, but what those who are doing consider most effective. The most effective means for managing their market risks were upskilling. But their most effective means of managing their workforce is workforce risks, is increasing automation to reduce the time needed for the tasks that they conduct. And the best way they have of resolving their technology risks is to use cloud-based solutions. So again, we see a big push towards technology as a way to manage these risks. So now let's talk about digital transformation and the state of digital transformation. Now, the process of digital transformation is one that's been going on for quite a while. You know, in the 1980s is when they first started to automate processes and to replace manual processes. And it was great, believe me. Everybody, you know, very few in the industry are still all the way back in doing, you know, things by hand. Still a lot of manual stuff that's going on in the construction industry. Every study we do shows that. but usually most are in the sort of mix. I do some things manually, I do some things digitally. That's where a lot of people are now, and no one's going backwards. But some of the challenges with the tools that when we move from manual to automated is, again, just like those custom-made tools, they tend to create silos of excellence. They tend to be really good at that one thing, but they have limited interoperability, and they don't really think about the bigger scheme of things. And if you think about this in terms of how building product manufacturers are impacted by this, well, they suddenly were pressed to provide CAD content, web content, BIM content. Okay, so that's all great, but then that's, you can see that what's going on right now with construction technology. And right now, venture capital is investing incredible sums into construction technology. This is a recognition that this market is ripe for improvement. Everybody thinks they've got the better mousetrap out there, and everybody's trying to promote it. So in some ways, this has created a lot of chaos, right? And we'll see that in some of the responses later, that contractors, oh no, it was in the previous one, the risks. Why subcontractors aren't adopting? One reason is, I just don't know which tool to pick, right? And when you start seeing all of this, you can kind of understand where that's coming from. So what's the next stage then? Where are we headed? And where we're headed is an integrated, connected, multi-party, multifunctional world. And you're all part of it. This isn't a contractor issue. This is an entire construction ecosystem issue. So we did a study with Trimble called Connected Construction. I've only featured the specialty trade contractor cover, but in fact, we interviewed architects, engineers, general contractors, specialty trade contractors, and owners, because we wanted, again, to cover as much of the ecosystem as we could in this report to see how well they're using digital workflows to connect themselves together. And I'm not going to go through the full definition of digital workflow, but it's just how do you exchange data? How do you communicate? How do you keep data and information flowing back and forth? And that is both internally, right? Are you just, is your project management and your finance completely separate in their own little worlds? Or are they able to exchange data really well? And multi-company. Are you able to exchange with, if you're a general contractor, how well are you exchanging information with the trades? How well are you getting information to your owners? That kind of thing. Uh-oh. There we go. So did my, no, okay, good. So to understand it, one of the first things we want to know, even before we ask them about, well, how much are you using these digital workflows, we wanted to understand, are you ready for it yet? And you can't just go from being in very siloed, isolated things immediately to having rich digital workflows across the industry. So we wanted to know, well, where does the industry stand? How ready is it? These are this is everyone, right? No, this is this is the specialty trade contractors. I'm about to show you everyone. And you'll see most of them land up in the medium zone, using a mix of disconnected software solutions. So most of them, yes, they're using technology and they're using third-party technology. Good news. But they're using a whole mix rather than having one really good integrated platform. And we see that specialty trade contractors, in terms of their readiness for digital workflows, they're at the bottom of all the other players that were included in. Only a third of them are ready for this compared to all the others. And now when we ask them about their levels of digital workflows, the purple columns are internal digital workflows, which not surprisingly are higher for everyone, right? It's easier to do things internally. And the green workflows, again, trades clearly lagging in the results compared to the other sectors. But when you talk to those who've actually invested in these, when you talk to those who really are engaged in it, they are seeing significant process and business benefits, make better informed decisions. Remember that stuff, and it's about lack of communication with the owner. This, again, if I understand, if I'm connected closer to the owner, I can make better decisions going forward. They can increase the efficiency of their internal processes. Remember that productivity issues that we were talking about? Again, this addresses that. And then, of course, increasing labor productivity directly. 44% found that, yeah, they saw notable increases that were really moving the needle. Outcomes. They found that they had higher quality products, that they could deliver them faster, but still increase their profitability. And if you can link these two together, then you're in a very sweet spot for the construction industry. Now, this is a big eye chart. We're not going to go through all the details on this. I just want to point out to you that we asked about a whole bunch of specific activities that they conduct every day. Administrative activities, how they manage their crew and in the field, and their construction operations, right? And we asked them first to say, well, how frequently do you find that the errors and delays that you experience on projects, and believe me, we've done plenty of research that I featured here that shows that most projects under construction, even those that people consider their very best projects, actually have delays. And a lot have errors too. So, how frequently can you say, these errors and delays, they're due to this. So that if we focus on this, we can really improve what's going on. And then for those who said, yeah, I can identify that, we said, well, what's the impact of the challenges that you're experiencing from these problems? So there's a lot I could talk to you for 10 minutes about this slide, but what I really want you to notice is that the impact piece, look at how many of them are high up on the scale of impact. Pretty much all of the construction operation options, most of the field management, when they have these problems, they're hugely impactful problems. And we found then we asked them, okay, well, which of these processes are you using digital workflows to do? And what we found out is that those who use digital workflows are the ones who know where their problems are coming from. Those who don't use digital workflows just don't know. How do you fix a problem you have if you don't even know where it's coming from? How do you avoid redoing the same activity over and over again if you're not sure what needs to be fixed? It's only the first step, but it's the critical step. And it's a surprise. It was not something we entered this to find, but that we were gathering that data to find, but it was really surprising when we did. Now, you've already seen this chart. Now, it's not that 29%, but it's the high, very high. Now we're going to talk about owners. Because one thing you should notice about this chart is that owners are actually the ones, the owners of projects, who are the most ready for digital workflows, and they're the highest users of digital workflows, especially internal ones. Not so much external ones, because they're waiting for the rest of the industry to catch up. And this is really another critical finding from this study, because if the owners are finding more and more value, and I would show you the owner benefit slide, but it actually looks a lot like the trade contractor slide. We saw very similar percentages about what benefits they were finding across the board. So those who were using digital workflows consistently, no matter who they were, reported the same productivity, quality, etc. So if the owners are finding that they really are getting a great deal of value out of the digital data they're getting, then they're going to want their supply chain to be giving them more digital data on their projects. This is going to be the biggest driver of digital transformation in the industry. Even before we get to the state where we actually have digital twins, the owners are already, just from their use of project management information systems, and we've done multiple studies on this now with owners, just from their use of these, they are already seeing enormous benefits and really want to see more. And what does that mean? They are going to start doing more data-related requirements from project team members. 2/3 of the owners studies need more of this on the building side, about half on the civil side. So there's going to be a lot of pressure on the industry to really catch up and become part of a data ecosystem. And when we ask the owners, well, who are you sharing data with? when you do, those who had external workflows, who are you doing it with? I don't think it's any surprise that GCs, consultants, and architects are here on the far side, right? But please note that building product manufacturers are important already. About over a quarter, between a quarter and a third of the owners say, yeah, we already use digital workflows to exchange information with them. And that number, I guarantee you, is going to grow. And they are going to be looking, I'm sure you all know that a lot of times owners now are getting more and more involved in the selection of materials, getting more and more involved in this process. And they are going to be like, we want you working with the people who can get us the data we need. So the building product manufacturers are going to be part of this whole digital project team. And you can see some of the impacts that are likely to happen. More product data is going to be needed. More multi-party scrutiny is going to happen on product selections. We're going to see a lot more modular, a lot more design for manufacturing and assembly. We're going to see more just-in-time delivery expectations, and we're definitely going to see we want everything to support our digital twin. I don't ever want to have to worry about any component in my building about when it's going to age, what's going on with it, because I'm going to want to embed it with sensors, and I'm going to want it to tell me when it needs help. So, as you think about yourself in this digital world, right? And as you think about yourself as becoming part of that ecosystem, you might be aware of the fact that you also need to think about cybersecurity, because the construction industry, goes back to our risk study, has a bit of an issue with cybersecurity issues. So there was a longer list than this. These are just the top 3 cybersecurity threats that were reported overall by the groups shown here. 59% said that they had experienced one of 6 cybersecurity threats in the last 2 years. Now, look at some of these. Unauthorized attempted logins, unintended third-party access to data. I got to tell you, if those are happening at Dodge, if they didn't happen to me personally, I'd have no idea. We're not talking to tech people in this survey. We're talking to project managers. We're talking to estimators. We're talking to C-level people, okay? That's who we're largely surveying. So I am almost 100% certain that 59% is a huge undercount. That most of these companies have, more of those companies than that, have experienced some of this, and it just hasn't trickled all the way around the company. Ransomware. Look at the contractors, the general, that blue bar, the light blue, 30% experienced a ransomware attack in the last 2 years. That's enormous. And when we asked everyone overall how long they could go without access to their documents before they experienced serious schedule impacts that could really affect their overall profitability, 77% couldn't go more than 5 days. But the average ransomware attack takes 20 days, not in the US. So it's just something, as we move into this digital universe, something you need to be aware of. But when we look at the digital transformation process, certainly one of the things we're recommending is that you embrace the increasingly integrated process. Again, owners are going to be driving it through the industry. You want to be the industry that helps support the move to it. This value, I'd say, increases your perception as being a resource, not just a source. Technology, increase your familiarity with what they're doing so that you can support it better. Data, being able for you guys to provide data on everything you do. And I know the keynote speaker is going to talk a little bit about carbon and what it's like to live in this carbon world. Being able to provide all of this life cycle data on your products, very, very critical. Making sure it's accurate, current, and complete, machine readable, open standards. And then business, we do think technology is also, this is like a whole nother talk I could give. We do think technology is going to support industrialized construction. We're talking about mostly modular construction there. the idea of either volumetric but also panelized, that whole shift. It's proceeding in fits and starts, but it seems to be a general trend in the industry, and supporting just-in-time deliveries. Okay, and I don't know how I'm doing on time, but I just have one quick section left, and this is, like they say in Monty Python, and now for something completely different. So, I'm not going to be going through, we're done with technology for a little bit. Not that there isn't a lot of technology that can support sustainability trends, but we're just going to look at what single-family home builders have reported in our most recent study, which we just published about 2 to 3 weeks ago. And it's based on a survey that we conducted in January of 2024. So this is truly immediate data about how builders and remodelers are considering. I've included the definition of a green home on a slide. I'm not going to read it to you, but it is pretty rigorous. And the data here, it was really interesting because it didn't work out quite the way we'd expected. When we gave them that definition and said, okay, based on this, are you building a green home? And then we asked them to say what share of green homes, what share of our overall projects were green based on that definition. We asked the same question in 2019. When it comes to new green homes, it only went up by 1 percentage point between 2019 and 2024. Well, that's a surprise. Does that mean sustainability is just not happening in home building anymore? The remodelers, different picture, went up by a whole 5 percentage points. That's actually pretty decent growth. So, the remodelers are doing more. So what's going on with the home builders? Well, it's interesting because we didn't just ask, here's a definition, what are you doing? We also said, here are very specific things that you could be doing, and we'll see the larger categories, but we asked about 30 very specific things that they could be doing to make their homes greener in these 3 categories, right? And we had asked about those same 30 in 2019. The use of water conservation practices overall, the group of 6 of them, went up by 9 percentage points overall. The use of material and resource conservation practices went up by 12 percentage points, and the use of energy efficiency practices went up by 17 percentage points. So we are seeing that builders and remodelers are doing a lot more high-performance green homes. They're just not thinking of them as green anymore. And we saw this not just in this finding, and actually I'm going to come back to the slide for a second, but in this one. These are the basic categories we asked about, and then we dug deeper into energy efficiency, water efficiency, and resource efficiency, right? So you see for water efficiency, 52% said that they're using some sort of water efficiency practices. 32% said they're using resource efficiency practices. When we asked about the specific practices, a heck of a lot more than 52% and 32% were using the top 2 or 3 practices that we asked about. So they were underreporting what they were doing when we asked about the overall category. And we have every reason to believe that's going on through most of these categories. So why is that? We think it's because a lot of them, remember, these are the top practices, they've just become part of how they build homes. We've actually seen this shift that you're a sustainability person that wants to see more growth in green. We're actually seeing the shift that you want to see. Oddly enough, the low performance of those who report that they're building green homes is because their standard for what a green home is has gone up, because this thing that doesn't qualify, even though I'm doing this, this, and this for water, and this, and this for energy, and this, and this for resource. It doesn't quite qualify because I don't think of those as extraordinary practices anymore. I think of those as the way I normally do business. So, but I did want to go back to this one just to give you a sense. I think there's one really kind of interesting point here, which is that you'll see that the yellow is those who say that by that definition originally, that more than 90% of their homes are green. Among those who are doing green homes, this is the biggest percentage. Now, admittedly, the second biggest is over here, but still, it's extraordinary that if you're doing more than half of your homes, it's very likely you're doing more than 90% of your homes green. So there definitely is a big trend among single-family home builders, new construction, to really specialize in green. We do not see the same in the remodelers. The remodelers is still driven by the consumers. And while a lot of them do do a lot of remodeling projects that make homes greener, they're not doing them on that high of a percentage of their projects. Oh, and I did want to actually. So yeah, so you can see it's no surprise, energy efficiency, obviously when you get up to 91%, there weren't a lot of practices over 91%. So, but you can see that there is a lot of activity. Health came in a very close third. Water efficiency and health were neck and neck. They actually switched places in the remodeler data. And so you have kind of top tier, and then you have a second tier, which is water and health, and then you have a third tier, which is resource efficiency and resiliency. And then really, the one area where they're really not doing much is anything greening their sites. They're not really thinking about the outside of the building. They're thinking about the inside of the building. Another thing that might be of interest to you guys is what do they think really works in the marketplace? When they do make investments, and the study does show that building a green home costs more. And even the very green builders still find that it costs more. But what do they find is the most effective ways to market it? This is just the top list. We actually asked about another 5 or 6 options. What we found, and this is not surprising and consistent with previous studies, but it's worth pointing out, is that it's about how the home performs, right? I think there's a lot of consumers out there, especially younger consumers, who feel green is somewhat aspirational, but in an affordability challenged market, sometimes green just sounds expensive. So what you want to be, even though you might want to be aspirational towards it, you really might care more about just quality. I know I'm investing half of my life savings in this. I want it to last. I want it to be as high performance as it possibly can be, because then I will get operating efficiency and long-term utility cost savings. Those are the things that really move a consumer. What was at the list that it didn't make the chart here because it performed so low? Sustainable, green. Again, if you think about the affordability issue in the housing market, none of that is surprising. When we ask builders what really is driving them to build more green homes already, and then we ask them what would encourage you to build more green homes, it's interesting because answers flip. At the bottom of what's driving them to build more green homes now is incentives and consumer demand. However, when you ask them what will make you build more green homes in the future, incentives and utility demand and consumer demand are the top 2. So if you're really looking for what's going to create more demand, again, 16% currently say that government incentives is one of the top 3 reasons that they build green now. But 48% said, hey, if I had government and utility incentives available in my region, I'd do more green. Now, there's a lot of money out there right now in government and utility incentives. There really are. So, and the Biden administration has really put a big focus on this. So what's going on? It's kind of a bit of a mess, though. Like, who gets the incentive? How do you convey it? Is it the builder? Is it the homeowner? Is it tax cuts? Is it, reduced taxes? Is it actual rebate? It's very complicated, and I think that there's clearly a lack of communication. So one of the things is, if we're going to be supporting an utility incentive program, we have to make it in a way that builders can respond to better. Another thing is, again, how do you drive consumer demand? Well, the study shows that 82% of home builders say they infrequently or never see home appraisals that reflect the value of a green home. Remember, nearly all of them say green homes are more expensive to build. How are you going to persuade the consumer? You're not going to want to pick up the extra cost if you're the builder. So how are you going to convey the consumer that this is something that they really want to do? But one thing is, hey, your home is actually more valuable. But if your home isn't, if the appraisals aren't capturing that, then the homeowner has no direct understanding of the value that's being added. In addition to that, 72% in never the green features they incorporate in homes included in their MLS listings. Well, if I'm a consumer, I'm a very green consumer myself personally, but I can't choose if I don't know what's going on. I don't know if I don't know that this home has these green features and this home has these green features. How do I even know I want to ask for green features at all? You know, I might not be a terribly well-informed consumer. I might not know all the ways in which a home can improve utility savings, improve all of this. And if I'm not being told, how can I create? Where does that come from? And by the way, we asked these questions in 2019. These responses are worse. It's gotten worse, not better, since 2019. So these are solvable things. These are things that can actually move the needle. I think these also suggest that the lack of consumer demand is that maybe isn't. And then finally, this was really exciting. For the very first time, we looked at resilience. We'd always asked about resilience as a category. You saw it back there. But this time, we really dug in and did a deeper dive on practices. So first, we asked them, are you actively trying to address the specific hazards, the ones you see here, are you doing that? And this is the share that's active. Now, we have been studying that green home data. That's like the 5th study we've done. We always looked at regional differences, and they never amounted to anything meaningful. Here, you only address problems when you think problems are going to occur, right? So it's not surprising that Earth-related problems, not every region has a really huge risk of earthquakes. You're not really going to put the earthquake standards. You're not worried about earthquakes. So only 12% are doing it at all, and the majority of them are in the West. No surprise there, right? I think when you look at the top two, wind and flood and water, maybe it's, she mentioned I'm from Middlebury College, right? Anyone who's following all those floods that occurred earlier this year, there was never anything like that in Middlebury that I have heard of in not just when I was there in the 80s, but since then. And how many other regions around the country are suddenly like, we've never seen flooding like this before. So, flood and water, only 44%. I suspect that's going to grow as you see more people really realizing, hey, wait a minute, we might have bigger flood issues given rainstorms, given Boston area, coastal flooding I see now. I mean, there's areas I go to every day that I've gone to for 20 years, and I never used to see high tide come up and take on, the role it is taking on now. So, the fact that the Northeast is the lowest for flood and water, I think is going to change. So it was really interesting to see how these broke out. Not surprising, but still very interesting. South, big investor on wind and water. But what was also interesting is when we looked at the practices, we asked, even those who are very concerned about fire, there was no single practice that we asked about in that survey that over 70% were using to address fire. When it comes to wind and flood and water, there were only 2 practices out of 5 or 6 or 7 that were used by over 70%. On the other hand, we asked about 9 earth-related practices. 5 of the 9 were used by over 70%. 2 more were used by over 50%. Only 2 practices were used by less than half of those who are actively addressing earth-related issues. Now, you might say, oh, well, that's probably because of their codes. But that's a lesson, right? It's a question of how can you get, for those who really care about it, we don't need necessarily the percentages to go way up, but what we need maybe for those who really want to address things, to have a good toolbox to do it. And how do you get some of these practices more utilized, better known, and create more durable housing in the event of an emergency? And I really think that the earth-related practices maybe show a pathway forward for that. And I don't have a summary slide, but I am happy to take questions.